Most recently, in 2007, Zarinah traveled on behalf of 2 international interfaith programs to Palestine and Israel. And during that same year, 2007, she also traveled to Egypt with an objective of peace building. In 2008 and 2009, as part of a Muslim Women's Leadership Training Program, Zarinah and 21 other women traveled throughout Abu Dhabi, Dubai, and Sharjah. I don't know if I pronounced that exactly correct. Domestically, Zarinah is a member at large of the Interfaith Conference of Metropolitan Washington, and has also participated in the Women's Leadership Institute in Hartford, at the Hartford Theological Seminary in Connecticut. Zarinah has been elected, or was elected for 6 years, and served as a very valuable member of the WPFW FM 89.3 radio station, where she has contributed tremendously to the station and its programming. In addition to all of these accomplishments, Zarinah has a program that is producer-host of Perspectives of Interfaith, a television show which is taped and aired at Arlington Independent Media in Arlington, Virginia. And that now airs on DC television. The purpose of the show is to dispel the myths and stereotypes of various faith traditions through engagement and dialogue. Formerly produced and hosted Islamic Perspectives for 6 years, Zarinah that is, the longest running program about Islam and Muslims, which ran for 15 years in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area. Voted the Producer of the Year in 2005, nominated Producer of the Year in 2011. The Struggle Continues is the name of that program. Completed her first documentary in 2011, which we will see momentarily, African American Pioneer Muslimas in Washington, D.C., Part 1, funded through the D.C. Humanities Council and the Islamic Society of Northern Wisconsin. Educationally, Zarinah received her bachelor's degree in broadcast communications from the San Francisco State University. She also has done master's work at San Francisco State University, and she's also done a certificate on Christian-Muslim relations at the Institute Summer Interfaith Program. These are only a few of her many accomplishments educationally and professionally. At this time, I'd like to turn the stage over to Ms. Zarinah Shakir.
And thank you, Dr. Ziegler. And assalamu alaikum, and shalom, and peace to all of you. And I want to say that, you know, it's hard to write a bio and minimize things, and you leave things out, and sometimes you put maybe too much in. And so it's, you know, when you see and hear people being introduced, and you say, oh my God, or, I mean, that's already in the program. Can I just read it? Or can I Google it now? You know, whatever. That is something that we are able to do these days. I just want to say really thank you that you all are here. And I am not going to do my presentation just yet. As you may see, if you have a copy of the program, we are going to show the trailer to the film that we did, that we completed in 2011. And it's about 3 African-American Muslim women, and we say Muslimas, that are in their 80s and 90s, and they are in Washington, D.C. Now, the very interesting piece for me at this moment, and some who are in the audience are aware of this, that the eldest woman, Sister Aida, who was 94, as of yesterday, she passed away 4 weeks ago. She unfortunately was hit by a car in Washington on Georgia Avenue. But what I do want to say, because a number of people, when you say that and it's like hit by a car, well, she was in a crosswalk, and didn't the person see her, and have you heard who it was? And I'm like, no, how would I know all of that, right? But the thing that people need to also understand is Sister Aida, who was a wonderful soul, and God, I can only say that God is blessing her wherever she is in terms of expanding her grave, which is something that we as Muslims understand, which is a little different than saying you went right to heaven or to paradise or the hereafter. She was totally deaf. So imagine walking across the street and someone is blowing a horn at you, whether it's a car, a truck, a bus, or anything, and you can't hear it. And a person might think they're slowing down, or this person's going to move faster, but she was 94 now, you know, but she was out. She was an extremely independent woman. And so I've had to say to a few people that have said, well, but she was in a crosswalk, why didn't they stop? Well, you know, I don't know, I can't answer any of that. But what I can say is that she was deaf and she probably didn't hear if the person was even blowing the horn. We are going to show just a trailer. So when you see this piece, she's the first one on there. I try to say to people, she had a very kind of high voice, and sometimes I played it and people are like, oh my, her voice. Well, please understand that she couldn't hear how she sounded in the last 10 years of her life. By the way, she was not always deaf. She was a gospel singer at one point in her life. The other sisters that are in it, they speak very briefly about their lives. The trailer is 5 minutes, so we'll get that started, and then I will come back to the presentation that I'm doing on Islam, women, and music. Thank you. Okay, so that's just a copy of the trailer, as you would see in any movie theater. And I would say the audience, preview audience, would be general, okay? So we have no gratuitous sex and no action and violence in it at all. So let me just get started here. Again, my name is Zarinah Shakir, and I wanted to read something from Quran very briefly, very briefly. O mankind, fear your Lord, who created you from a single soul, and he created its mate. From the two of them spread countless men and women throughout the earth. Fear Allah, God, in whose name you appeal to one another, and be mindful of your obligations in respect of ties of kinship. God is always watching over you. The reason I read that particular ayah, and there are thousands of ayats in the Quran, again, for those who don't know, this particular presentation is about Islam, women, and music. Well, that particular ayah is not necessarily about music, but it does speak to the creation that God has made man and woman, and we were not pulled from a rib. At least that's not what we're told in Islam, that we are mates, that we were made of the same substance, and that there was man and there was woman. And what I've learned in the specific community that I'm a part of under Imam Warthi Muhammad is man means mind and woman means womb of mind. So think of that and what that really means. Mind, and that's what's operating in our world today. Some of them are good minds and some of them are not such good minds. But the womb of mind, obviously you can envision where we come from, a womb. And women have such an, so much to do with who we are on this planet. Obviously, I don't need to explain all of that, but let me also say that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ had also said, when a man came to him one time and he said, who should I honor? And the Prophet said, your mother. And then the man asked him again, asked the Prophet, who should I honor? And he again said, your mother. And then he asked again, a third time. He said, but who should I honor? And he said, your mother. And the fourth time he asked the question, then the prophet said, your father. So that means that women, not just with the prophet, but where, I guess, where God has placed us, has put us in a very important place. And so we need to know that being a woman in this world is a very, not just being a mother, because all women are not necessarily biological mothers, but women do have nurturing spirits, as do men. So I don't want men to leave here and think, well, I know how to raise a child, or I know how to cook, or I know how to clean, I know how to bring home the lamb. We won't say bacon, maybe some turkey bacon or something. But what we do want to understand is that men and women have a role in our society. So this piece is about women and music. And so what I want to say about that is we have been told, we being a lot of people in our African American community, Muslim community in particular, that in some cases music is haram. Now for those of you that don't know what haram is, it means prohibited. Well, music is haram. Well, I would say, taking it back to the mother, let's say, how could it be haram if a mother is singing a lullaby to her child, to a baby, or singing to a group of children to maybe calm them down or to get them involved with a particular task? Is that music haram? I mean, I'm thinking any woman in the world. I don't recall actually hearing fathers singing lullabies, but I do know that I've seen and heard women singing a lullaby to a baby just to calm the child down. And so I'm thinking that's music. Birds are not human, but birds sing. That's music. There's music all around us. Even when you hear the rustling of trees, sometimes there's something melodic about that. And so what I'm trying to do is perhaps take it to a different paradigm or put a different face on what we say about music within our religious life, that being Islam. And it is not something where I would feel ashamed. For those of you that were able to read the letter that I had sent out along with the flyer, a lot of people are not aware that I am a musician, that I play 4 instruments, piano, organ, violin, and flute. And when I first started college, as I say, a million years ago, I was a voice major in classical music. And at that time, I was not a Muslim, but I never really gave much thought to what God has given to me and to others as a talent. When you have a talent and you hear people say, you either use it or lose it. And so imagine being able to sing, to be able to play instruments, or for that matter, to invent the cure for AIDS or cancer. And someone says, well, you can't do that. That's, that's not your calling. Well, who are you to tell someone that they can't sing, they can't dance, they can't write, that they can't go into math or science or be an astronaut or even be the President of the United States? Imagine that. So with that being said, I want to also take us to a couple of other areas. Now that I have at least said that I don't believe that music is haram, there are others, there are scholars who will say that it is. But I lived in Saudi Arabia, a place where a number of people feel there are a lot of things that are prohibited. Well, they listen to Kenny G and Kenny Rogers, and on, okay? So is that music? I'm thinking that it is. And you can go to what may be considered the most primitive of cultures, and one of the major similarities that men have, but even women, is the drum. And the drum you will find in almost every culture, whether it's in Europe, in Africa, in Asia, in Latin America. I don't know now if there's any drumming down in the Antarctica, but I will say those places where there are human beings, the two common threads or similarities are the drum and the sword. It may not be a sword, it could be a spear, or it could be a bow and arrow, but it's some device that happens to be something like a weapon. So where music, once again, is a part of everyone's culture, one way or another, it's hard to really fathom for me how I would not have music in my life. I don't watch a lot of television, but I do listen to a lot of radio. I do a radio show, but when I'm not listening to talk radio, and I don't mean Rush Limbaugh or something like that, I'm talking about some realistic talk radio, I'm listening to music, and it may be classical, it may be jazz, it might even be country and western. I like the lyrics, but the melodies sometimes really inspire me also. So I want to say that I've even brought along some CDs that I'll just kind of show you from here. I'm not going to pass them all out, but these are Muslim women who are performers. They perform from classical music to R&B. Some could be spiritual, like gospel music. Many of us at this point still have come from the church, and so hearing gospel music or spiritual music, Christian music, is something that is a part of our life. And I'll say the other piece is music is in our DNA. I think I have already said that, but when some of you came in earlier, this music that was playing in the background is by a group called 3 Generations, and that's 3 women who happen to be Native American. They're also African American, but also 2 of the women of the 3 are Muslim. And so one might say, well, where's the connection? Well, I can also say that I have Native American roots, and perhaps a lot of you here in the audience do also. It's, we live in America, and there's been, this is, as they call it, the melting pot, and the melting pot occurred where conception occurred in many cases. So a lot of times when we think again about music being included in our lives, it gets us through the day, it gets us through the night. It doesn't matter to me sometimes whether it's a woman or a man, but I do happen to support a lot of women who are in music, and many of them are Muslims. And we've had discussions around whether or not they've been told it was haram. All of us who are involved in music have been given that particular piece. But I do want to say, after I do my presentation, that I have 2 sisters here that I'm really proud to say are part of our program, and one will be singing, that will be Latina Wallace, and she has also brought her CDs, and they're available. And the other will be Naila Muhammad, who I believe is closer to all of your ages. She's a student at Howard University, a film student. She's my intern, and this is her last semester of school. So just bringing a little close to what I have to say, because there's so much that I could say about our involvement in music and what we do and how we bring that about. But for me, I'm here to really say that there's one camp that will say that it's haram. There's another camp that will say it's halal. Halal, for those of you that do not know the meaning of that word, it means accepted. It's the opposite of what's prohibited. And it's also similar to what's kosher. But halal is more than just about food. Halal has a lot to do with how we think, how we present ourselves, it's not just, when most people think of kosher, they usually think of meat, kosher meat, or kosher food items. But in our case, if you're saying something's haram, it doesn't just mean that it's about the food. And if it's something that's halal, it's not just about food. It's how we conduct our lives. So there's something that may be prohibited and something that is accepted. And then there's something called bid'ah, B-I-D-A in terms of the spelling in English. Bid'ah means innovation. So some people can take something that may be haram and now innovate it and make it acceptable, and it may not be acceptable at all, particularly where the Quran is concerned. Now this is a very small Quran and it's all in English, and some of you have probably seen Qurans and they're usually larger books, but this is my Quran that travels with me and I travel with it. So what I'm going to do right now, before I bring Sister Latina up to perform, is to just kind of give you an idea of some of the musicians. Again, this is, and I know you can't see from there, but this is called Three Generations Presents Journey Home. These are Native American, African American, and Muslim sisters. I have a spoken word artist, and her name is Phenomena, and I'm going to ask Ren if he will play that in just a moment. Just a moment. This is a sister who's, and most of these, by the way, are local women in the DMV, the District, Maryland, or Virginia. I do know some from California and Atlanta and Boston. I didn't bring all of those. I was not trying to bring my library of music. But her name is Isan Bilal. Big red box. When you look at this, and I will probably bring these down so that you can see them, you will look at her and probably say, she's a Muslim? Yes, she's a Muslim. And, you know, there's a surah that says, to you be your way, to me mine. And I don't have to dress the way that you may see women from Afghanistan who wear burqas, women in Iran who wear shadars, women in many parts of the Arab world who wear abayas. We wear what is comfortable, and we are modestly dressed. That's what's important. Women are the ones that you can usually tell if they're Muslim. The men may be dressed in European clothing, Western, but women, again, we are the representatives of this religion. This is Ebony Khan, who's a jazz singer here in the Maryland area. This is a sister that I've known since she was a child, and her particular, well, she's got a stage name now, and but I know her as Khalil Ali. This sister is the person who you heard at the end of the trailer. Her name is Zaima Sabri, and this is her third CD. And again, this is Maimuna Youssef, who is one of the performers with Three Generations, and she's also local. And she has kind of stepped out in terms of the music that she's performing now, and she's included R&B and folk and a number of areas. So I just wanted to share those with you. I would like if you could play Phenomena's piece. This is a spoken word piece that she has done numerous times, and this is her CD also.
Embody the essence of sensuality, the evolution of eternity, the diversity of humanity. This convergence of complexity that spills from my soul makes me realize that my goal is to be that infusion of truth that destroys all illusions. Kind of like a blending of Dead Prez and India Ari, only my voice is heard not through music, but rather through poetry. So yes, you could say that I am something of a phenomena, an appearance of awareness in an experience, a miracle. But then, aren't we all?
Are moving forward, and we are not necessarily taking for granted the talents that God, Allah, has given to us. So with no further ado, let me introduce our first performer on stage, and that would be Sister Latina Wallace. She is a Baltimore native, and she is a writer, a singer. She's involved with much that has to do with our community. She teaches Arabic, and she also is a new wife. I was at her wedding when she just recently got married, and she is also a mother. So I'd like to bring Sister Latina up, and I believe that she's got a track that will play behind what she's going to do. Thank you.
To my Muslim sisters and brothers out here, I greet you with the greetings of Assalamu alaikum, and to all the rest, peace. As Sister Zarinah said, yes, I am a native of Baltimore. I did make Hajj in 2001. Born and raised in Baltimore. I'm so grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for our leader, Imam Wallenstein Muhammad, because when I first came into the deen, it was told that women was not supposed to be out front and singing. And all of my life from a child, coming up from a little girl, God has blessed me to be talented, to be able to sing. And I grew and I came into the deen and into the music. So he blessed me to produce, write and record the CD. My first CD debut was titled Spiritual Journey. And it had 3 songs on it. This one is titled Time to Change. There's 11 songs on it. Right now it's in one store. It's in the Upper Way Bible bookstore. You can purchase it by way of the internet as well. So without any further ado, I would like to do a song there titled Time Will Change. I mean, excuse me, Top of the Mountain. Yeah. Imam Wallenstein Muhammad, he says to us to identify with your own culture. So we come up with singing from our roots from way back from our ancestors. On the streets, looking for love, but to realize it comes from above. He built it inside me, deep in my soul, trapped in this body with nowhere to go. I'm tired of all this searching and looking for love. I'm going up to the top of the mountain. I don't want to live like this no more. I'm going up to the top of the mountain, to be with my Lord. Like the child from the cradle to the grave, seek out his knowledge, strive in his way. I've got to hold on to what Mama said. She said, baby, trouble don't last always. But I'm tired of all this searching and looking for love on the street in this cruel world. I'm going up
Oh, you gave me control of my life. I once was blind, but now I see. You came down so low for me when I was so weak in my flesh. It was you that made a way. You set me free. Now I'm going up to the top of the mountain, the grave clothes gone. You rose me from the dead into the marvelous light. Now I can walk upright because of you, Lord. You put food on my table. I know you're able. Supplies of my every need. Oh, how you made a way for me. You deserve the praise. So I'm going up to the mountain top, and I'm gonna be right there waiting for my Lord. The grave clothes gone, I can carry on. Oh, I thank you, Lord, for all you've done for me. You deserve the praise. You deserve the praise. All the praise. Thank you. That's the top of the mountain. You know, I must always be grateful to God for what He has done for me. The song is my life. This is the road that I have come off of. You know, God said He finds us on the brimstones of the hellfire. And then we call on Him and He answers us. And then He calls on us. So I bear witness that there is no God but God. And as muslima that I am, I bear witness there's no God but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And our story is our story. I cannot conceal that. To say that, hey, I've always been this muslima that always sang. All through life it's been a struggle. It's been a struggle from the cradle all the way through to the grave and to now. It's here and into the grave and after. We have to struggle. But we have to share our experiences, you know, and to have someone to put that myth out there that Muslim women is not supposed to be singing is absolutely wrong. This is from the soul. This is from the soul. Back in the day, during slavery time, we got messages to one another. Through songs. Yes. Through songs. This is how we did this. So we can't take it away. Bad experiences that we have in life on the broad and wide road, God said He shows us the straight and narrow, then the broad and wide, and we choose. Well, I've chosen to be on the broad and wide at a time in my life. I got some pain. And God saved me. Then He gave me the song. He inspired me to write. He allowed me to go into the studio, produce and record, and now present it to. And it's music that reaches all of humanity. It doesn't discriminate. So, assalamu alaikum, and I hope that you have enjoyed it all. Thank you.
Walaikum assalam. So, our next performer, who is a young lady who has been writing music, she sings, and she's also a poet and a spoken word artist, painter, student, and a number of things. So what she's going to do today, I've asked her to present a couple of poems. Will it be one or two? Okay. Her name is Naila Muhammad. She's born in Philadelphia. No? Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I don't know why. I've gotten it kind of confused. Her parents were born in Philadelphia. She's born and raised in Washington, D.C., and she now lives in Maryland. And again, as I had mentioned earlier, she's a student at Howard University, finishing up her last semester in film. So let's bring on Naila Muhammad.
Assalamu alaikum, peace be unto you. This first poem I'm going to perform is called Thoughts and Questions During a Rites of Passage. Who am I to remain amongst these? Earthbound, scrambling for crumbs, simple-minded chickens. Hardly pull their heads up long enough to notice one breaking free, they look at me. Self-respecting, dignified, regal. See, I'd rather fly and soar amongst the eagles. Intermingling with elevated minds on higher frequencies. Tuning into that sublime essence, quenching that ever-present desire to get higher spiritually. Baptized. Bathing in a sea of forgiveness that has become one with my own tears. Reborn. This moment is the beginning of a greater sustenance. Just as a fool would be thirsty at the edge of a lake, a wise man could find balance through the shift of the plates. We all walk the earth searching, leaving impressions. For those who mature, their work never lessens. Their seeds yield bountiful fruits, adorning the earth in various hues. Multiple shades of multiple colors. All sensory perception resonates at particular frequencies, and I can project my future when I study my own mental frequency. If I ponder the difference between my current activity and the optimal performance, then multiplied by my enthusiasm, I can manifest a product of heavenly proportions. How do I clarify this seeming abstraction? Pure excellence, complete satisfaction. If ye are all God's children of the Most High God, what's the use for shyness or complacence? Not moved by the arrogant, unconcerned with this low life, I'd rather be opposite than adjacent. But what is it that would make man and woman attain to perfection? What is it that divides the sage and adolescent? Thinking one's womanhood or manhood is based on physicality is the ultimate fallacy. It's a childlike mentality. Those who are grown in reality are those who are well studied and those who learn teach, the bearers of truth. Knowledge is better shared, spoon-fed to the youth, because the victory is to the steadfast, not the fastest, and the best of trials are our rites of passage. Thank you. So that was the first one. This next poem is something I wrote my freshman year at Howard, and it's called Subconscious Conversation. I went to take a brief nap, woke up the next day. Everything was hazy and the clouds were gray. See, I had an agenda but no desire to fulfill it. My mind was just open and nothing could seal it. I had the sudden urge to listen to a wise one speak. That same urge made me remember my dream, it seems. I had been in a conversation with someone I know. He said he felt handicapped by all things physical. Said nothing is tangible about our state of mind except what we allow to affect it, like money, like wine. In time, we must learn to value our relationships. In time, we must walk glass on head without breaking it. I naively interrupted, had a little something to say. I just couldn't keep the flow of my mind at bay. Asked about a process, the lies test. Where, when, why, and how does one journey? What does it take, and how does one turn the recurring temptations into fading vibrations? It's like I know I need patience when the weight doesn't make sense. Just then he changed his cadence to a pitch that was firm, looked me in the eye and said, there's much you must learn. When you look at the sky, can you tell that the burn, that the flame from the sun is symbolic of the warmth you should seek in everyone? Though their fertilization, the impurities in the atmosphere has tainted, it's time to reinterpret the picture you've painted. Your reluctance to change your state of mind is only healthy when it's not based on pride or it's done on a knelt knee. Before I could even contemplate the lesson, I was rambling on and asking more questions. I asked him, how should we read the moon and the stars? What exactly makes you how you are? He said, I seek and value truth in all of its forms, gaining wisdom from both the quiet and the storm. It's the child's fervor, the man's calm, the wet palms, the way fingerprints collide against the conga, pulsating. emanating the essence of souls lost and those not yet in existence, the wind resistance branches, the swaying of leaves, painted watercolors, shades of green dripping onto canvas, petals drifting to the mud, just as we were made of love, clay fashioned into various forms, fabrics fashioned onto various forms, silks and satins, palatal fibers, and other fingerprints. The lingered scents into your nostrils, imprinted aroma of one you've cherished, has value heightened when it seems they've perished, but just as there's rain, see death as renewal. Each soul must attain, and this next point is crucial. But at once it was silent. I looked around, and something felt migrant about the sound. Conversing to myself, I out loud proclaimed that today is a new day, tonight is a new night. I'ma just call this the beginning of my life.
Allahu Akbar. Let me just say that imagine with the three presentations, Phenomena, Latina, and Naila, that they didn't do what they are, talented and gifted and given something from God to be able to do. Imagine if you didn't get to hear that. And there's so much more with a lot those CDs that I have of other sisters, but just in general, you know, when we put women under the bus or in a corner or in a box somewhere, what you're really missing. And many of you who have come at least to share this afternoon with us, you know that that's not the case, and that that we have so much more to be able to give and to share. And so with that being said, I'm going to open it up for any questions, if you may have any. I notice that there's a lot of food still back there, and I would like to just, if you want to just break now, we can do that. Otherwise, I can try and entertain a few questions. Oh, Dr. Ziegler, yes?
First of all, I'd like to again thank all of you, Zena, Tina. Well, you know, hey, you don't play that kind of music. But like, how do you utilize your talents to interact with other ethnicities, other races, other cultures? If you could just elaborate a little bit, you know, and that doesn't have to be necessarily through music, through spoken word. I even just did, you know, in terms of elaborating on how that's utilized as far as communicating.
Well, I'll let Naila speak, but I will speak for myself. The way that I've been able to use what I feel I've been blessed with is by doing radio and television. I've been involved with media for over 30, 40 years, and I love being able to meet people and to interview and to speak on topics or to get guests that can enlighten people about what's going on in the world. And so I think that when I was a teenager, I knew growing up in New Jersey that I wanted to go to school in California, and I did. I think just before I turned 21, I moved to California, and then eventually I started going to school there. And I think what has to happen for people, you know, I've also taught school. I've also been in the college and university setting where I've worked with students, but mostly I've been middle school and high school teacher in social studies and language arts and music. And what I like to do with my students is always to get feedback. I don't want to be, as I remember a couple of the classes I took in San Francisco State, where I'm just a bullet or a gun shooting bullets at my students and not letting them to return to me what's on their mind or what they are feeling or thinking. And so for me, it's about opening up vistas that a lot of times are closed to us as, well, I'll just give you this anecdotal story. A couple of people here have heard this story before, and it'll be very brief. When I was in Egypt about a little more than 5 years ago, there were 11 of us a part of an interfaith group. There were 4 of us that were Muslim, 3 that were Jewish, and 4 that were Christian. And so every meeting or event that we went to, we had to introduce ourselves. So I think this was about maybe our 3rd time going to a meeting with some people within a particular community in Egypt. And one of our, all of our guides and escorts that were with us, they would usually just kind of sit in the audience and didn't usually say anything. So I was about the 5th person to introduce myself, and I said, my name is Zarinah Shakir, and I'm an African-American Muslim woman. And before I could go on, one of our guides, she interrupts and says, oh my God, you've got 3 strikes against you. And I looked at her and I looked at everybody in the audience, and I mean in our group, and I said, what did you say? And she said, you have 3 strikes against you. And I had to really think quick on my feet, and I'm usually pretty good with a comeback. So I said, well, it really depends on what game you're playing. I said, in America, if you're playing baseball, 3 strikes will take you out the game. I said, but if you're bowling, strikes are in your favor. I said, so folks, let's bowl. And people kind of laughed, and they, you know, was sort of a nervous laughter or whatever. But what I did was, about an hour later, I went to this woman and I said, you know, that was, first thing, I thought that was very rude, and it was also insulting that you say that, that I had 3 strikes against me. I said, but more than that, I said, what you're saying is God made a mistake making me African-American woman and now Muslim. I said, he makes no mistakes. I said, so if I were you, I would be, you know, a lot more conscious of when you want to interrupt someone about what they're saying. And maybe you might have pulled me to the side and said something about, you know, what you may think my dilemma or challenge is living in America. But you're not an African-American Muslim woman. And I know what that's all about. So I said, I think that you owe me an apology. I said, but again, even if you don't give me one, God didn't make a mistake. So to just further or finish answering your question, Dr. Ziegler, and for all others, you know, we are, a lot of times we don't know what our talents or our capabilities are. I think I read a few years ago people who graduate from college and they majored in whether it's psychology, sociology, science, education, whatever it might be, PE, that only about 15% of people who go to school with further education are actually doing what they trained in. So I'm not trying to make it, you know, hard or tougher for anyone here, but 15% of the people are in fact doing what they actually studied and what they thought they were going to do. Now I might just say, and ending my piece right here, my son, I have 1 son and 1 grandson. My son never went to college. I didn't know until after he finished high school at 17 that he didn't want to go to college. He said, Mom, I didn't even like school. And I said, what? I'm a teacher. And you don't like, and he said, well, no, I don't mean it quite like that. But my son, at 10 years old, wanted to be a truck driver. Well, my son is 35. What do you think he does? He's a truck driver. And so my friends and family members said, oh my God, there's actually somebody who knew what they wanted to be at 10 years old and they're doing it? And I said, well, he is, and he loves what he does. So, you know, 6 in one hand, half dozen in the other. So on that, I'll let Naila come on up.
Okay, so to address your question, I would just say that music, poetry, paintings, photography, all art forms, I think they transcend culture, race, or whatever background a person may come from. So it's not that I write or, do whatever I do specifically for one group. I think whatever you put out there can touch people from a diverse background as long as they have some type of connection with it. So I don't know if that answers.
It does.
Okay.
So, if there are no, oh, yes. Walaikum assalam.
It's really a joy to see you again and to experience this incredible talent.
Thank you.
And to our young sister, may Allah, God, continue to bless you as your incredible talent even grows and grows and grows. My question is one, well, it's really two parts. Number one, does the African American cultural context involving Muslimas perhaps differ slightly from other Islamic cultures around the world in the space that is claimed by women who are performers? And number two, how does that space in your travel and interaction with Muslim women and other Muslims from around the world, how does that space in their minds begin to transform itself so that they become more insurgent and more assertive as women regarding their right to be equal human beings in the context of their societies? Okay,
two good questions. And how I would answer is, as an African American, I do say, and I was saying, I think even to Dr. Ziegler when we had talked about this particular topic, that we have in our, and I said this also in my presentation earlier, that we have in our DNA, coming from Africa, that the arts, the culture, the music, there are drumming circles of women that I know in West Africa and in the United States. I know women who are, that are Muslim here in America that are singing. Now, just like Latina was saying, when I first came into the Muslim community, there was a lot of pushback around, well, you can't sing. I was in fact, I wasn't singing at the time. I was a DJ in California, and I was one of the first women in radio on the other side of the Mississippi a long time ago. And I was being told, you can't do that. And I'm thinking, all I'm doing is backtracking music and doing and saying words. And I think what the pushback was the time of the night when my show was on, which was 1 o'clock in the morning to 7. And that was hard, believe me. But it wasn't hard because I was Muslim, it was hard because I couldn't stay awake. And then when you're trying to go home and sleep in the daytime, it was more difficult to sleep when people are calling you. But I think because, again, maybe unlike Naila, who's younger, a number of us that are older came from the church or came from certain environments where music was always around, whether it was blues, jazz, rhythm and blues, some classical music, and on and on. And I knew very few people when I was growing up as a non-Muslim that didn't have some kind of music in their home. And so I think that for women from other cultures, it's a cultural thing, and it happens to be also part of the patriarchal society that has, I think, continued to keep women in the background. And as I was thinking earlier today and watching the news before I came in and looking at this whole situation around electing a pope, and thanking God that we don't have to do that, that they have to keep coming back to figure out, well, do we have a pope yet? Have they selected someone? We can go straight to God. We don't have to go through a minister, through a reverend, through the imam even, or an ayatollah. We can go straight with our prayers to God. And I was thinking, what a blessing that is. So for other Muslim women, I think when they see us as the African American women, and some of the others that are able to step out and step up to the plate and say, sister, you don't have to do that. Have you read the Quran? The Quran does not say that you have to take a back seat. So, any other questions? Well, I just want to say, oh, Roger, okay.
Islam manifests in many different forms in different countries and around the world. Assuming, and I will just, for purposes of discussion, let's assume that the Muslim population in the United States will grow over the next, say, 50 years. What would you anticipate to be the distinctive features or characteristics of American Islam?
Well, I think we're already in that, that flow, because what I'm being told is there's somewhere between 7 and 8 million Muslims in America. 1/3 of them are African American, from what I've been told. And as I go, again, I didn't mention, but my television show is called Perspectives of Interfaith. And so I talk to Muslims, Christians, Jews, Buddhists, Sikhs, all kinds of different people from various faith traditions to dispel, as I mentioned, dispel the myths and stereotypes of faith traditions. So as I meet Muslim men and women, the younger ones from whose parents may be from other countries tend to be a lot more, and a lot of them go to school here. And they're in school in a lot of places around this country. And they are a lot more progressive. They're a lot more interested in getting with other people and not just being with their families. They may celebrate their Ramadan and the Eids with their family members, but as I meet young Muslims from families that are from Pakistan or from Bahrain or from Senegal or from South Africa or from other parts of the United States, they seem to really want to move forward and take themselves out of whatever the whatever may have been traditional in their cultures in the past. So in 50 years, I would say that just like we've been told that Islam is the fastest growing religion in America and in the West, look out. So I think that's probably all, unless anyone else had anything else to say or ask. I just want to say thank you all for being a part of our program this afternoon. And what this has also allowed me to do, Dr. Ziegler, is to really think about really tightening the presentation and doing a lot more research myself on Islam, women, and music, because there's a lot to be said, and I was only able to touch on a few things. So I'm going to try and continue pursuing more about this and stepping up to try and get others to participate.